Hello, bowling fans. This is Dustin J. Marcos coming to you taped, as always, from the gym along the Colorado River, Laughlin, Nevada, bringing yet another edition of your favorite bowling show, Bowling Evolved. Joining me, as always, is one of the greatest left-handers in PBA Tour history, my good friend, and the man who, well, quite frankly, revolutionized the stroking game from the left side of the approach, the one and only Eric Forkel. Eric, how you doing tonight?
I'm here, buddy. How are you? Good to hear from you, as you.
I'm doing very well. Looking forward to doing our show today, and we have a lot of great stuff to talk about tonight, and have a very special guest coming on, and Scott Noren later tonight. So I think that'll be a lot of fun to talk to him and kind of get his perspective on what's been going on with the PBA and what he's doing in bowling.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be great. I know he was able to capture his second title a few weeks ago here in Vegas. Spoiler alert, of course. But he does bowl extremely well on that chameleon pattern, so I'm curious to see what he has to say about that.
Yes, as am I. We had a lot of great questions come in from you, the fans. I want to say thank you very much. We will ask as much as we can in our time with Scott tonight. But before into that, we kind of have some interesting news we're going to start off here with. Bowling Evolved is officially going to be launching our very first tournament in February. And I'll tell you, Eric, it's going to be a doozy.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be in Laughlin, and hopefully we'll get a nice turnout, and we hope to put on a good tournament for the players.
Most definitely. We are actually going to be working with Billy Heiselt and the Proprietors Cup. As our listeners, you will know, Billy's been on our show several times to discuss the events that have been going on in Ohio, and he is just growing and growing, and we're very happy to say that our event, which is going to be called the Laughlin Cup, the bowlingevolved.com Laughlin Cup, will be in the beginning of February. Tentatively, we have it set for February 3rd. We may be changing that date to February 9th due to some booking conflicts. We'll know a little bit more next week. But basically, it is going to be a 5-game qualifier. We're going to have 2 squads available for bowlers to come down and shoot. And then that evening, we'll have a match play with first place being an entry into the Proprietors Cup, plus a significant amount of money, which will be more enough to buy you a plane ticket back and forth to Ohio, hotel rooms, and have some food along the way as well. I don't think we want to starve anyone that goes to Ohio.
No, you got to eat. You got to eat some food.
But yeah, I think we're going to have a really great event. I know we're going to have a Facebook page up here shortly. For anyone that has any questions, again, we will have a little bit more detail on that on next week's show. Speaking of food, though, Eric, here's kind of an interesting question for you, and this is actually something that was written into us a few weeks back. Someone has asked about the importance of nutrition as far as being a pro bowler. Now, obviously, when you were out on tour and as the game has progressed, health and well-being has become much more of a concern. For you, how important was nutrition before tournaments?
Well, that's a great question. I think it has changed quite a bit. Like I said, I haven't been out there for 6-7 years now, but I'm sure my eating habits, along with a lot of other guys out there, could have been a lot better. But it was always important, I thought, to have a lot of water. Definitely have a lot of water on hand. Used to carry the water bottle around quite a bit. And, if you start losing a little bit of energy here and there, the snacks in between, games maybe. Some guys would have a candy bar or what have you. I tried to go a little healthier, maybe a granola bar or something like that. But it was always difficult because most of the time when you're competing, you're not really thinking about anything else but bowling. So I would say the water is really a really great idea to carry. Definitely have water down with you because, I don't know, drinking soda or what have you, I just don't think that's the right way to go. I really don't.
I don't have much to chime in with because I'm definitely a caffeine junkie when it comes to lawn tournaments. I don't think I'm the only one, unfortunately.
Oh no, you would fit right in. I mean, a lot of guys would definitely have their Starbucks in the morning before we would bowl A squad, of course. But you had to be careful. It's like, I don't know, I made the mistake the night before to have a lot of salt in my food, and then the next morning there was always that possibility of the hands swelling up and, not getting a good feel with the ball. I mean, again, things have changed a little bit, and I think the guys are in much, much better shape than what they used to be. As a group, there's still a few out there that are maybe not in the greatest of shape, but they can all bowl a ton of games, and that is the biggest thing that you have to be able to do, especially like if you were competing in the World Series a few weeks ago, you have to be able to go the distance, and it's a lot of games, and, that's what it's all about, especially professional bowling. You have to be strong, so nutrition is very important. If you look in, I think it's Bowling This Month, they always have a article in there on nutrition or healthy, things to do health-wise to make yourself better off. And they always have a lot of great stuff in there in Bowling This Month. And if anybody's interested, they can check out. They have nutritionists and strengthening coaches in there giving, their opinions on what you should be doing, what kind of exercise you should do. To me, strong legs, strong back, really important, You don't need to be real muscular or muscle-bound, but you got to be in decent shape. I mean, you got to have some strong legs, have some good cardio. I mean, that's what gets you through, So those kind of things I think are very important. I think they're important not only for the tour, but just to bowl, just to get yourself in decent bowling shape, competitive. I mean, if you bowl league every week, maybe not so much. It's more of a recreation. But if you're going to take the game more seriously, getting yourself in better shape is definitely a bonus.
Mm-hmm. Now, you bring up an interesting point, too. You mentioned your hand swelling and the effect of food on your body as you progress down the road. I know every bowler in the world has had problems with swelling or their equipment not fitting right from time to time. I know even in my own work in the pro shop, you always have people ask what kind of recommendations you could do in order to alleviate some of these problems. Now, for yourself personally, what would you do in a situation for someone that had a problem with swelling hands? Would you recommend maybe going to a urethane slug instead of using drilling into a reactive urethane ball? Would you recommend the use of tape? What exactly would you say?
Well, that right there is the greatest reason nowadays for the interchangeable thumbs, whether it's switch grip or the IT from Vice. I use the IT myself. I think it's really good. You can drill up different thumb sizes. It's unbelievable what you can do with this system. I started doing it a few months ago, and it's amazing. You can change the pitches a little bit in your thumb, and you can drill different pitches into your thumb, and you can just interchange them within the different bowling balls. And of course, you can have different sizes, and I think that's the greatest thing. You drill one side, and if you can drill the same thing, just drill it slightly larger. So if your thumb swells, instead of pulling all the tape out or what have you, you just put the other thumb in there that's a little bit bigger. That's one of the greatest things that they've come out with in the last so many years. That interchangeable stuff, it's fantastic for that reason. For that reason, it's just simply fantastic. It really is. I think it's great.
You see quite I was going to say, you do see quite a few of them now, especially out on tour, and even in your recreational leagues, a lot of people are doing that now. So, why didn't we come up with that, Eric?
Well, it's been around. It's different. Some concepts of that have been around a long, long time, but they've just perfected it and made it better and better, and now it's just almost the norm out there. I would say 80% of the guys use the interchangeable thumb. I mean, I think there's some who don't, but the majority of them do. And like I said, for that reason, you can have, you can drill 2 or 3 different thumb sizes, one smaller, one larger, and in that way, you're covered. You're covered. They don't seem to break out of the ball as much as they used to when they first were invented. They found a better way to tighten them into the ball. So it's really a cool thing to have. And it would have been nice to have that back out there in the day. Back out there in the day, you had different bowling balls, and they all had slugs in them. And some people used to use thumb molds and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I tried the thumb molds for a while. Those are pretty good too, but once you glue it in, it's in. This, you can pop it out, change it, do this, do that. It's unbelievable. Yeah, but that's the way it is.
I was going to say, I've always been a big proponent for the urethane thumb slugs. I've always, or easy outs as they're well known. I've always been a big fan of those to get out of the ball a little bit quicker. But I agree. I think that the slugs or the interchangeable are such a great investment for anyone that's really bowling more than, once a week, that's going out, maybe even traveling. I know anytime I even come from Laughlin to Vegas, my hand changes because of the altitude. So, it's amazing how the weather, how the food, how anything can affect how you fit into your bowling equipment.
Oh, well, yeah, getting that feel is really, that feel is, well, I think that feel is really important. But, yeah, that feel is unbelievable. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, you got to have great feel. I think the guys who you have a good feel of the ball, you can do a lot with it. If you got a bad feel, well, it gets more difficult. So, yeah, the feel is key. That's for sure.
Well, I know one gentleman in particular has had a great feel for his bowling ball the last, ever since the World Series, is Mr. Scott Norn. And when we come back from our break, Eric will be stepping out, Scott will be stepping in, and we'll have the interview asking the questions you have sent in to ask Scott. So, right after this, stick around. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest on the Bowling Evolved podcast tonight. He is a two-time PBA champion, and I should say, if you have not seen the spoilers for the upcoming World Series of Bowling, you might not want to listen to the interview, but that's another story altogether. Definitely a bowler who has a lot of roots in the sport of bowling, stemming from his mother, of course, who is the Hall of Fame herself, the one and only Mr. Scott Norn. Scott, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's definitely our pleasure. You were one of the bowlers that was actually most requested to appear on our show, believe it or not. So kudos to you on that. And once again, thank you very much for being here. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to have you here on Bowling Evolved.
Thank you.
Well, let's start right into it. Obviously, World Series of Bowling was very good for you. Actually, a two-time champion now. How does it feel to be riding on that and being back in the winner's circle?
Pretty amazing. There are a lot of one-time titleists in the PBA's history, and after the year I had last year, you just never know if you'll ever make it back into that winner's circle. You wonder if maybe that was just a one-time thing, just got lucky for a few games, but, certainly getting another one under my belt helped make me feel a little bit better about that.
How would you address the World Series as a whole? I mean, obviously, it's a lot different than some other tournament formats that are out there. It's very grueling on the bowlers. Yourself personally, what did you think about it?
Well, it's just very difficult. It's every day is not only a new tournament, but also still part of the qualifying for the major, and every tournament new oil pattern. So it's very difficult to adapt as quickly as you have to adapt to each of the different oil patterns every day.
Now, you won on the chameleon pattern, which is the second time you've won on that pattern. What sets that apart for you? I'm not saying that obviously you can't score on any of the other patterns or anything like that, which is obviously untrue, but why does that pattern match up so well for your game?
It's a little bit lower volume, which is never bad for me since I have kind of high speed. But other than that, I would say that normally, with the exception of maybe this year, it's one of the tougher patterns because it generally is a little flatter. And that makes for, a little more premium on shot making. And that tends to be my forte a little bit more than scoring necessarily. But this time it was a little bit more high scoring than I'm used to seeing out of this pattern, and somehow I was still able to keep up. So I think I kind of attribute that to a little bit lower volume.
Well, let's kind of go back a little bit here, kind of get away from the World Series. You grew up in the sport of bowling, definitely were around it your entire life. Tell us a little bit about that. How was it growing up being, the son of Hall of Fame Virginia Norn, and what did she teach you about the sport, and, what did you take from that to further with your own career?
It's difficult growing up that way. It's easy to, well, maybe not easy, but it's in my opinion a little bit easier sometimes to just kind of come into the sport fresh because no one really knows what to expect from you. But when you come into the sport, your mother, my mother obviously is Hall of Famer in almost every sense. It makes it a little more difficult when you're just starting out because people expect more out of you because of what your mother already accomplished. So stepping out of my mother's shadow was certainly a difficult thing to do. Not that I wanted, obviously discredit her, because without her I wouldn't be where I am today. But certainly it's nice to, kind of have my own identity in the sport.
What do you think the difference was between her era of bowling and your era of bowling? What were some of the big differences, at least in your eyes?
Well, the main differences were just that, obviously it was less technology, less bowling ball, and more about the player and making the moves that they need to make. And I kind of wish we could go back to those days personally, but, we can't. Those days are gone and they're not coming back. I actually prefer the old style more than I prefer the new style.
Do you think that the older style bowlers were the better all-around participants in the sport, or do you think the athletes of today are better, or do you think it's just a mix of both?
It's very different. It's hard to say who's better, because I feel like if you were good at the sport, you would have been good no matter the era, because you would have been able to adapt. But, as far as right now, the difference, I'd say it's less being able to hit one specific board throughout the entire lane. They really had to thread needles. And now it's more about having knowledge to see ball shapes, know exactly what ball you need to go to, what adjustments you have to make, the fine-tune adjustments you have to make, because it's not only the ball, it's also your rotation, your speed, your rev rate that's going to dictate whether or not you're able to carry enough. And while a lot of people today are very good at being able to fix their rev rate and their ball choice to make sure they have as much room as possible. That was not the objective of people back in the older era. The objective back in the older era was to find a spot you could hit the pocket and then just not miss it.
So am I right to assume that you think you'd be able to score as well in the older era as you could today?
Absolutely. That's what I prefer.
Well, we're going to open this up. We actually received a lot of letters from our listeners, and I want to say thank you very much to everyone that wrote in with questions for Scott. Once again, for anyone that is listening for the first time, we do accept any and all questions at our website, bowlingevolved.com, on our Facebook, facebook.com/bowlingevolved, or of course at our Gmail, which is bowlingevolved@gmail.com. Scott, you ready to answer some of these fan questions?
Absolutely. Bring them on.
We'll start here. That's kind of an interesting one. First question was, you said, basically being with Motive staff last year in comparison to now being signed with Ebonite, what was your opinion of Motive equipment, and what was your opinion of going back to, or going to the Ebonite company?
I have nothing but the utmost respect for Motive as a company. It didn't quite work out for me. A lot of their equipment is a little bit better matched for some higher rev players. It doesn't quite suit my game as well. I know they've taken huge strides in the last few months, and I did actually use a couple of their bowling balls during the World Series. But certainly, for my game and what I feel like Ebonite suits what I need a lot better.
Do you have any preference as of right now with the Ebonite product? Have you thrown enough yet to really kind of give any feedback on what you like and what you don't like?
Personally, I'm telling you, a lot of the new stuff that is not released yet but will be released shortly is really good. So be looking out for it, because it is really good.
Well, I'm sure a lot of our listeners, they'll definitely be taking that advice. I know we've had several different people from the ball companies, and of course myself still associated with Motive, and Eric with Storm. We always have something on tap, so I'm sure Ebonite has a lot in the works. Moving on with questions. Now this is a very interesting question, and one that I'm sure you've heard quite a bit. Obviously, as an openly gay athlete, you were able to open some doors for a lot of people. A gentleman wrote in saying, Scott, I want to say thank you very much for opening my eyes that being gay is not just fun as an athlete. How do you feel of yourself as an inspiration to others?
I really just wanted to, when I came out, it was, like I said before, it was not a publicity stunt. A lot of people knew, and so a lot of people had, different feelings on why I might have done it. They thought I was just grasping for attention or, you know, lots of different reasons that had nothing to do with why I actually decided to publicly come out. It was more about the people in, you know, middle of nowhere in Nebraska that might have never been exposed to anyone else that was gay and had never understood their feelings before. And it gives them a forum and a place to be able to say, oh, other people feel the same way I do, and maybe I'm not alone, and maybe I can still contribute to society.
Oh, and here's kind of running with it. I mean, now, with the recent election, things have seemed to change a lot as far as gay and lesbian rights. Do you feel that things are getting better, that more people are being accepted for who they are, or do you think there's still a long way to go?
Well, both. I feel like we've obviously gone a long way because otherwise, I mean, we would have continued to take losses in those popular referendums up until this year. Same-sex marriage had never won a popular referendum, and this year we won all four. So obviously things are getting a lot better than they were before, but there's still a long way to go.
Okay, going on to the next question here. Here's one we always like talking about. Dear Scott, I understand that your opinion differs from Mr. Forkel as far as game versus sport. Do you mind discussing how you believe?
Well, I mean, look, I think this is a sport. You just have to. There's a difference between the people that win a few times and the people that win for decades. I mean, if you're going to have any kind of longevity in this sport, you're going to be in shape. You're going to fine-tune your instrument that is your body. You cannot last in this sport for 20 years if you don't take care of yourself. Now, that being said, it's different than other sports in that it's a little more based on finesse and other attributes than brute strength. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit. You're going to see a little bit less of the stereotypical athlete in bowling, but that doesn't mean that it's not a sport. The fact that we're struggling doesn't make it less a sport than tennis did when it was struggling. Tennis struggled. That didn't make it not a sport.
I was going to say last week as well, Eric definitely said, after listening to Dave Walker's comments at the World Series about comparing the recreational game to the competitive sport, that it is, in fact, almost like two different entities in itself. Would you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely, and it should be. It's just like tennis. I mean, if you look at the difference between league bowling and tournament bowling, it's not even close. I mean, people spend, $20 a week to come and have a good time with their friends and drink, and that's great because I do the same thing. And it's the way I remember why I do what I'm doing, because I come here, I have fun with my friends, and I go to the bowl, I have fun with my friends, I have fun with my family, and it's just about that. It's not about anything else. So, while I understand a lot of people feel like it's a game, to me it's never been a game, and it's difficult for me to believe that anybody that's been in this for this long and has devoted their entire life to this would consider it a game, because there's just too many aspects. There's too many small muscle moves. There's too many muscle memory necessities to make this just a game.
Well, I would still like to see the battle of the left-handers, get you and Eric out in the lane sometime and see what happens, one-on-one.
Oh, well, we've done that plenty. We've bowled plenty of regionals against one another, and it's gone back and forth.
That's going to take us into our final listener question that we have time for tonight, and this one's actually pretty interesting as well. Dear Scott, I had a great time watching you at the World Series. I want to ask you, though, what do you think of the current direction the PGA is taking? Do you think that Tom Clark's direction is trying to modernize the PGA, or do you think there's other things that can be done to make it better?
I think a little of both. I think that, obviously the PBA is struggling, bowling in general is struggling, and everyone's just trying to come up with a solution as best they can. I think that Tom Clark has a lot of great ideas. I actually think the new Jeff Reese, I think he has a lot of great ideas. I think he's a very smart businessman. Not only does he have a love for the game, but he has a very good understanding of how to run it as a business without taking the humanization out of it, without forgetting the bowlers and the fans. And I think that it's starting to go in the right direction. I think the PBA League is a great idea. I think it can be refined even further over the next few years into something that can last a lot longer. I'm very excited to see where it's going, and I know that especially Jeff Reese has a lot of contacts that can help bring in some large sponsors, which is obviously something that we need, because entry fees, it doesn't matter if 5 people bowl or 500 people bowl. Entry fees don't drive the prize fund. It's sponsorship money. So it's important that we continue to make shows worth watching, which to that end, I will ask everyone to make sure they watch the ESPN show, both the one that my best friend Missy Parkin's on December 9th and the one that I'm on December 30th. Especially the one on December 30th is going to make for some good TV. I did not personally watch it, but I was a part of it, and it certainly felt like good TV.
Well, I would hope anytime you win a title that it makes for good TV one way or another.
It was pretty good TV. It was every match was exciting. Every match came down to the end of the game. There were no blowouts. They were all very exciting, especially the championship match.
Well, I hope all of our listeners have a chance to tune in and watch you win that next championship. I want to say once again we've been talking with Scott Noren. Thank you so much for appearing with us tonight, and hopefully we can have you on the show again.
It is my pleasure.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, stick around, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back, bowling fans, and well, Eric, I'll tell you, it was always great to have, some of these people on the show that are from all these different aspects of bowling, and having Scott Noren, obviously, on our show, it was no different. Obviously very opinionated on some issues, and makes some very valid points, but if one thing, if any, he does seem to agree with the concept that bowling is a sport, and, you can rationalize it as a game, only if you look at it from the recreational level.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I would say. Like I said, when you go to watch people bowl leagues, which most of the people do, I consider that really, that's the part of the game that I call a game. And if you go watch guys bowl on the Pro Tour or the international play or collegiate play, well, then I think it's definitely more of a sport. So there's two ways of looking at the game. To say that every aspect of the game is a sport, I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. And obviously to call every aspect of the sport a game, no, I don't agree with that either. So that's how I like to look at it. And, whether people agree with me or not, that's fine. Scott was a terrific interview. He's a champion. Not only he was he's a 2-time champion now on the Pro Tour, and like I said, he likes that chameleon pattern. That's a good pattern for him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say one thing too that he brought up. He was, as we talked about the recreational side of it. I know this last week was very interesting, at least for me. I had an opportunity. I don't bowl very much handicap anymore, and for good or for worse, or for better or for worse, if you will, and. Had an opportunity to go down and sub for a friend of mine in their league, in a handicap league for the first time in quite a while. And I got to say, Eric, it was interesting to bowl in that environment and a lot of fun, to be perfectly honest. But again, from the game side of things, it was interesting to see a group of bowlers that were there and just having fun. And, I think sometimes even the top pros may miss that from time to time. If they're competing every week, just seeing the camaraderie side of the sport of bowling.
Well, yeah, and I think when they get into that team concept in January or February, when they have it back in Detroit, you'll probably see a little more of that camaraderie. You'll be able to view it more because it's been a singles game, especially with the PBA when it first got started back in the early 60s. They went from the team concept that was before that. They brought it into a singles concept. And, you know, you just get in that environment. You're always competing by yourself, for yourself. Team camaraderie isn't really a part of it. So that's just the way it is. And all the guys out there competing, they're used to the singles aspect of it. So, you know, that's the way it is. But it'll be nice to see some team play, and you should see some more camaraderie, that's for sure.
Now, Eric, yourself personally, I mean, do you miss bowling in team competition?
Pardon me?
Yourself personally, do you miss bowling in team competition?
Well, you know what? I didn't bowl a lot in team competition, to be honest with you. I spent 15 years on the pro tour. Obviously, no team competition there. Prior to going out on tour, I did bowl league one night a week. It was a trios league, if I recall, and it was okay. But I'm not a big fan of league play, so to speak. I like tournament competition. So I would say I enjoy tournament bowling more than anything else. There are some people who just love team bowling and team play, but I myself like the singles aspect of it. But, you know, I think everybody has their niche or things that they like, and that being the case, one thing about the game of bowling, it has a lot to offer. It's got all different aspects. You've got team play, you've got doubles, you've got singles, you've got trios, you got all kinds of stuff, and that's the cool thing about it.
Well, you mentioned a lot to offer, and I know as we're coming into the end of our show this week, I do want to touch base on some of the different things Bowling Evolved is going to be offering here within the next few weeks. Obviously, this has been our first, how should I put this, all original show since the World Series other than the recap show. And we have a lot of great things on tap here, Eric, especially, first and foremost, I do want to mention our guest next week is going to be the one and only Mark Roth.
Well, that'll be great. You know, I know Mark, well, what can you say? I mean, he basically revolutionized the game back in the 70s, and, you know, Mark, he's just one of the, you know, to me, one of the greatest bowlers of all time. I mean, he's got to be up in the top 4 or 5. I mean, you know, he revolutionized the game, with that powerful release of his. You know, I bowled against Mark a little bit at the end of my career out there. Mark was just about getting done out there himself, and, you know, and obviously when I bowled against him, he was toward the end of his career, so to speak, but he, you know, obviously a great bowler. And, you know, then of course he had his stroke a few years ago, and, you know, just the fact that he's still around and being able to talk to us is pretty cool. So I'm sure that'll be should be a very interesting, interview.
I very much look forward to it. I think it's going to be very exciting to kind of hear his take on, you know, how in a lot of ways, you know, his version of bowling, and when I say his version, of course, I mean, you know, the power game really became predominant on tour, and, you know, definitely was one of the first ones to explore what went on with, you know, the power release and the power stroking kind of game. You know, so yeah, I think it's going to be very exciting. I also know that we are going to have several more ball reviews coming up. In fact, next week we'll have I have an opportunity to throw the new releases from Motive, which will be the Venom Strike and the new Raptor. I think that's going to be interesting. I get a chance to throw some of that. Anything new Stormwave that's coming to your hands yet, Eric?
No. The IQ Tour Pearl. And that ball just came out. I was able to throw it a little bit at the World Series. Pretty cool ball. It's definitely a strong pearl. Very angular at the back. It's a low RG ball, but it's very strong coming off the spot. If you like the IQ Tour, then if that ball starts to get a little early for you in the front part of the lane, definitely switching to the IQ Tour Pearl would be the right call. You might have to do some surface adjustments on the ball. The ball is 1,500 out of the box, and depends on your style and the way you roll the ball. You may have to adjust the cover, but I think that piece is going to be a nice piece to have. Once again, all these balls are special. You just got to know when to use them and when not. I personally love the IQ Tour myself, the Solid. I think that's one of the most versatile balls on the market, and I've got 4 or 5 of them, or 3 or 4 of them, something like that, and they all roll slightly different, but they just have that great controllable roll, and you can just do a lot with the ball, and it's fantastic. You know, the Lucid, another one of the new ones that I had a chance to throw, that ball is really good. It's a very strong asymmetrical ball. It's just a, how can I say? It's a little cleaner. It would get a little cleaner through the front than the IQ Tour, but it definitely pops a little stronger on the back. But another great ball. It's just the last couple balls that they have come out with is just really, really good. And that's just they continuously come out with one good ball after another, and that's hats off to their R&D, which is one of the best out there on the market. They're just fantastic.
Absolutely, and as I said before, having a chance to throw a lot of the new motive equipment that is coming out and reviewing it, which we will be doing a little bit more in depth here next week, as I said. It's been very exciting. I think as anyone that's a staffer or a bowler in general will attest to, this is a very exciting time for equipment. I mean, I honestly cannot think of, other than maybe when you first start seeing some of the different particle equipment or the asymmetrical equipment, when so many companies were producing so much great bowling equipment. I mean, I honestly can't think of a single ball company right now where I would say, well, I don't want to throw any of their stuff. I really think that every ball company right now is producing equipment that has a lot of merit for a lot of bowlers.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to beat up any of these companies. They all have a great product. And you have to design the balls that people throw. They're all pretty good, but they have to fit the type of style that you bowl. And I think we've talked about this before, but it's really true. I mean, Storm's got great product. Roto's got great product. Brunswick's got some really good product out right now that people are really liking the way it rolls. Motive's got a good product. Everybody, Ebonite's got good product. They got 4 brands to deal with. It's just kind of hard to find really bad bowling balls. But again, these balls are all good, but if you throw them at the wrong time, none of them are any good. So you have to know, it's just like with your golf clubs. When it's time to drive the ball, you better have a driver. You can't really drive the ball with a putter in your hand. It's the same thing with the bowling balls. You have to know when to use the pieces and at what time, because the technology's off the chart. It's fantastic. But you still have to, the human element is still there. You still got to make a good shot. You still got to get it off your hand clean. You still got to throw the ball pretty good to strike. But once you do, the strikes are just unbelievable nowadays. I mean, it's just amazing. That's today's game.
Oh, most definitely. Right before we close up here, I just want to give a quick, brief rundown. I do have believe it or not, a guest list, so to speak, people we have talked to that will be appearing on the show over the next several months. And we have quite an extensive list, Eric. I believe there's a lot of people that have seemed to kind of embrace what we've been doing, which thank you very much to all our listeners for giving us this opportunity. But, the names, I'm just looking down the line here. We have Mike Flanagan agreed to do our show from Inside Bowling. Bobby Laster, the former Atomic Dexter Storm rep at one time, also out on tour. Eric, I believe you bowled with Bobby at one point.
Yeah, Bobby was a pretty good player from Southern California area, and then he bowled a little bit out on tour as well. Known Bobby a lot of years. I don't know what he's put up to the last so many years, but it should be an interesting interview as well. I mean, I just think that this is a forum. People can come on here and talk about what they're doing, what's going on, or what's going on in the industry. And you know what? I think the more information, the better. And it's nice to know that people actually want to come and talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Bobby's going to have a very interesting. He's basically been out of bowling, doing solar industry now, which I think will be a very interesting interview. How he's done the transition from bowling to energy efficiency. I know we're going to have Mark Williams on the show at some point. Mr. Haugen, Michael Haugen Jr. is supposed to be on our show at some point. We've had just a lot of interest in what we've been doing. We hope to have Glenn Allison on the show again. And all of our guests who've been on have just made the show so great. And, all I can really say is thank you to all of them, and thank you again to all of our listeners. For those of you who have any questions, comments, ideas, or even, things that you'd like to see on our show or guests you'd like us to contact, we can't do it unless you tell us once again at bowlingevolved.com, facebook.com/bowlingevolved, or of course at our email, which is bowlingevolved@gmail.com. Again, we read everything that comes in, so please feel free to send in. I mean, good, bad, or the ugly. Lord knows Eric's got enough hate mail since we started this thing, so, bring it.
I've got boxes of hate mail, yes. Boxes and boxes.
Well, let's see, I think the famous line is just one sentence. It's a sport. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know why they would just write that, but hey, it's, one of these days we'll put out your address.
That's okay. That's all right. Like I said, hey, you know what? If I agree with everybody, it would be boring. I can't agree. I can't agree all the time. Because what good is that if we all agree? That's what it's all about. You got to have opinions. Got to have discussion. Got to make your points. Got my talking points, and they got their talking points, and that's fine. I respect their opinion. Whether they respect mine or not, that's okay. I've been around this game a long time, and I've had the opportunity to bowl with some of the greatest bowlers in the world, and some of the greatest bowlers of all time. And I've watched them bowl as great can be, and I've watched them bowl as bad can be. So I've seen just about everything, and so I feel like I'm in a position to voice my opinion on something that I believe. And, maybe that's what it's all about. That's what this show is about. It's we try to push the envelope. I mean, how many bowling shows do you know that people come on there and, discuss not only their bowling abilities and how good of a player they are, but their sexual orientation. I mean, I didn't think this was ESPN, the ESPN show, but, we're doing our own thing here, and we try to cover all the bases. And that's what we've done, and that's what we'll continue to do. And I'm sure with having Mark on the show next week, Mark always had an opinion. He was very opinionated. And obviously, he's an icon. He's been around for bowling industry for 30, 40 years. I know at one point he was a proprietor, I believe, and he's worked in all aspects of the industry, obviously mostly as a great Hall of Fame bowler, but I'm sure he can offer his opinion on what's going on. I mean, I'm sure he's got a lot of opinions.
Absolutely, again, and I think instead of beyond the lines, we're beyond the masking, and I think that's going to be our new catchphrase at some point.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what it's, like I said, there's some other bowling talk shows out there, but I'm hoping that we push the envelope a little bit more and discuss a few more of the things that maybe other people don't discuss. And why not? It is what it is. Bowling is full of not only great bowlers, but they have a lot of great personalities. They have they're very unique. And I think a lot of time people, they used to ask me questions when I was out there. What's your favorite food? What do you like to eat? What do you like the movies you see? They ask you all these human interest stories. Well, that's kind of what we do with our interviews. We try to discuss all kinds of things. If I remember correctly, and I will have to mention this, with Mark, I could be wrong, but I want to say, he used to love trains. Meaning, I don't know if it was how you would build the train sets at home, and they would come up with these elaborate train sets, and you would run them in your garage or in your upstairs of your house or whatever, but with all the details. And if I remember correctly, I think Petraglia was telling me that he was a big fan, of running the trains. He just loved, that was his hobby. That, and of course, I believe I want to say the hockey team. Either the Islanders or the Rangers, I can't remember which one, but one of those, he is an unbelievable fan. I'm sure you can look it up on his bio somewhere, but I think it's the Rangers, but I'm not sure. I'm not positive there, but I know he was a tremendous hockey fan. but he also had a couple of quirky hobbies on the side that I thought was kind of interesting, kind of cool.
Well, there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions for Mr. Roth, we will have our forum up on the Facebook page, or also you can email us. But ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of the show. We want to say thank you again for listening. For Eric Forkel, I've been Dustin J. Markowitz. Have a great night.
Good night.